Wonderful. And can everyone see my screen? Ori, can you see my screen? Just confirming. Wonderful. Awesome. Okay, great. So we'll start it off. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's Change Management Information session. My name is Maddie, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Continuing Education at the University of Windsor. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this session again is being recorded, so your mics and cameras have been turned off. A recording of this session will be made available shortly after the event. We do have some time allotted at the end for questions and answers. So if you have any questions during the info, if there's something that Ori mentions that you would like a little bit more information on, please type that in the chat and we will address that during the question and answer time. Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge that the University of Windsor campus sits on the traditional territory of the Three Fires Confederacy of First Nations, which includes the Ojibwa, the Ottawa, and the Potawatomi. We respect the long-standing relationships with First Nations people in this place in the 100-mile Windsor-Essex Peninsula and the Straits, Les Détroits of Detroit. We at Continuing Education acknowledge the systemic oppression and generational trauma that impacts Indigenous communities today. We vow to learn about Indigenous history and complex systems of colonialism that have caused these traumas and the results of the influence as it relates to the world we live in today. We will seek opportunities to raise awareness of the knowledge that we've gained through continued learning. We'd also like to note that it's Treaties Recognition Week on November 3rd to 9th here in Ontario. We also have Orange Shirt Day coming up in the next week. So we invite you to learn about the University of Windsor's Indigenous initiatives during these weeks and these days, as well as throughout the year by visiting our uwindsor.ca website /Indigenous Peoples. So on to the agenda today, we'll be hearing from our fall 2024 Change Management instructor, Ori Shabi. He'll be reviewing the University of Windsor's Change Management Practitioner certification that will be running starting in November. After his presentation, again, we'll be having the Q&A for everyone to get their questions answered. And now kind of moving on to introducing Ori. Our Change Management Practitioner certification is offered in partnership with Procept Associates Ltd. And today, again, we have Ori Shabi, our fall Change Management instructor, with us to chat about the upcoming program. I will now hand it over to Ori to introduce himself. Ori, on to you. Oh. Are you frozen?
Let me just...
Oh no, Ori, are you frozen?
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
It's not me. It's the computer. It's
Oh.
the Microsoft Teams. I think you can see the slides, and I hope that it stops freezing.
Yep, we can see you now.
Okay, so my name is Ori. That's a good thing. My name is Ori. You can see the screen, right?
Yep, we can see you and hear you.
Excellent. Okay. I'm just a little paranoid about it now. So I'm Ori and I'm with Procept, and we are talking about the CMP exam preparation course. Many people don't know what the CMP is about. It's administered by a company from the UK, and it is called APMG, something like PMI, but with more offerings and a variety ranging from project management to agile to organizational change. And we will talk about this course. A little bit about me. I've been doing this for quite some time. Project management and organizational change and agile and business analysis and leadership and all these things that are so intertwined together. And we're going to see how all those skills are coming to play when we are looking at that certificate. So let's see what it's about. Right. The CMP certification, again, APMG, globally recognized, designed to validate expertise in planning, implementing, and managing organizational change. We all know that organizational change is a little bit of a problem. Well, there's too much change, and we often don't do it right. And it's often not defined properly, but again, not defined properly. Even projects suffer from lack of clarity about the definition of what success should look like. Right? I mean, and we can see it not only in projects and in organizations. I mean, I'm sure that many of you have worked in environments and in situations where the success criteria was not clearly defined or clearly articulated, and the result was never as good as it could have been. Right? Even taking a look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? The success criteria for a fan would be to win a cup or maybe second round or beat Boston or something. But the success criteria for the ownership of the organization is to make money. So this is a very glaring difference, but at the same time, these kinds of differences happen everywhere, including well, everywhere literally, and stakeholders just have different agendas. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that we sometimes don't know. So now make it bigger, make it about change. And here we have now major differences and gaps as to what the change is about, what it needs to achieve, and then to what extent. And of course, what do we call success? So that designation, that certificate offers a very wide range of um, theories and concepts that can be put together in order to really provide an approach that is much more robust and much more tuned to the needs of the stakeholders around us. Because at the end of the day, change management, unlike the project that is about producing a product or a result, the change is about managing people's perceptions and attitudes, right? So the question is not necessarily how good the idea is. The question is more about how much buy-in am I going to get to that. So this course is designed for every person who is involved in the change process, ranging from project managers to change managers to change leaders and to those stakeholders who are sponsoring the projects or the change. And remember, they're all intertwined because a project in and of itself represents change to the organization. And at the same time, of course, projects are often the tactical building blocks of a more strategic change initiative. It's also very applicable to HR professionals because they are involved in resource allocation and in talent acquisition, right? And we said any other leaders who are involved in driving the transformation, including the people who are going to have to deal with it and their managers, etc. So pretty much everyone who has anything to do with change, it's a good idea to actually take this. So why the CMP? It provides competitive edge, right, in our job market, right, and helps us demonstrate or rather acquire and then demonstrate mastery in change management strategies and methodologies, right? Considering we're dealing with people here, there are many moving parts, and sometimes the conditions are very volatile and they fluctuate, and including people's perceptions and views, right? And we need to make sure as much as possible we're managing that buy-in. It helps with career growth, right? Because certified professionals can access higher level roles in organizational change, consulting, leadership. There's increased demand for this discipline, right? Especially now with the introduction of more AI, and then it's going to help us also stay current on how to handle the new realities and how to become really more efficient. Organizations are actively seeking professionals with certified expertise, right, in managing the change and in participating in it to make sure their transformations are more successful. And of course, global recognition because it is recognized everywhere. Now, when we say a successful transformation, one of the people that we're going to talk about in this course is John Carter. He's one of the well-known names when it comes to change management. And Carter, already in the 1990s, he introduced a number, and he said 80% of change initiatives end up failing. And when he said failing, he didn't mean that they crash and burn. It meant that they were falling short of delivering on the intended value. And I think 80% is a very disturbing number. Um, and now, talking 20, 30 years later, it's not doing any better or so much better. And the reason is not because 80% of the things that we try to do are wrong, right? The main reason is that we don't do it right. We don't manage people's perceptions and attitudes, and we don't hold their hands, and we assume that if it's a good idea, people will buy in automatically. And also, another thing that we're going to talk about in the course is that we fail to connect between change management, which is the more big picture and the strategy, and project management, which is more tactical stuff. So you can have now a project manager who's doing very well as far as budget and timelines and what have you, but they may not drive that project according to the big picture needs, right? So I may deliver what you asked me to, but is it done in the right context? So context is a big word. So the way it's going is that the course is going to be broken down when I talk about two certificates, Foundation and Practitioner. We start with the Foundation. The Foundation is 3 day, right? And now that it's done online, we do it in 5 half days, and we're going to see why, because the last half day is essentially for the exam. So 5 half days straight within a week sessions. And then usually it's the following Monday or early in the following week, participants will sit down through the foundation exam. And the program, of course, is prepared to prepare you, is meant to prepare you for this exam. It focuses both on theoretical and on foundations, and then down the road, practical applications. So even the foundations course will help with practical application. We start with change management principles, talking about organizational culture. And for that, we need to know both about what organization is, what is an organization, and what culture is about. And then the drivers for change. Then we talk about engaging stakeholders and communication strategies and overcoming resistance. And then we move toward the more specific exam preparation, case studies, and analysis. It's interactive, it's interesting. Even though there's a lot of content and not many exercises, there's a lot of engagement, right? A lot of conversation, reflection, right? Questions, answers, things like that, right? So it says hands-on exercise. At the end of every section, we do have an exercise, sometimes in the breakout room, depending on the time, but participants are always engaged because we got to apply, we got to think how it happens in our organization, provide examples, ask questions, stuff like that, right? And of course, real world case study. One thing with the foundation exam is that it's an exam about the material. So it's multiple choice, and all the questions are direct questions about the material. What is this concept? Who introduced it? What is this? What is that? So it's a lot of memorization. Of course, understanding concepts will help us remember them better, right? So we're going to look at core skills, right? About change management, about stakeholder engagement, about dealing with resistance, right? Practical approaches for reducing resistance and, of course, fostering a positive change culture. And, of course, the real world application. So skill learned, applied to leading change in all these various roles. And we talk about the specific roles, the project manager, right? The change leader or the change manager, the sponsor, the other stakeholders, the change agents, right? The local managers, and then looking at the roles and responsibilities. And of course, it helps also the HR leaders and the customer transformation. Tools and techniques are also covered in the course that are directly transferable to the workplace, ensuring that you can pretty much immediately apply your knowledge. Remember, you don't come back to your office and say, oh, by the way, Carter said this or Sanya said that. But at the same time, you're going to be able to actually provide a more robust approach. And by robust, it means a clear way of doing things with the ability to better handle the changing conditions, because conditions are going to change on us. The foundation exam is going to be a little bit of a race against time. So the questions are very straightforward, directly about the materials, right? All the concepts that we're talking about. And again, multiple concepts related to the change curve and the Kubler-Ross, right? And we're talking about Lewin, how we unfreeze and then we refreeze. And we're going to talk about Connor and his 8 steps that are now called N steps because we don't want it to look, he doesn't want it to look too linear, right? So, and Myers-Briggs, right? MBTI, right? The personality or types considerations. And it's about showing understanding. So we are looking at 50 questions in 40 minutes, a little bit of a race, right? So we're looking at about an average of 48 seconds per question. Obviously, it's not out of reach, right? The questions are short. Usually they are one-liner. The answers are fairly short. Usually they're referring to a concept. You want to apply all these things that you do in multiple choice, right? Process of elimination, making sure you read the question and all the answers properly and in full. And remember, the questions are not so tricky. They're not notorious to be tricky, but at the same time, when you have a multiple choice exam, there's always going to have to be some level of trickiness. What does it mean? If I give you the answer clearly and it's completely distinguishable from all the other answers, what's the point? Right? I can ask you, what day of the week is it today? And then I can answer, here are the options, yellow, green, blue, or Thursday, right? So obviously I made it too easy, right? But make sure that the question really, or rather the answer really addresses what was asked in the questions. For example, I can ask you what day of the week it is, and one of the answer options is going to be September 26th. Right now, September 26th is correct. It is today, right? But that's not the question. So you got to look for the Thursday. So the passing mark for the foundation exam is 50%. It means that out of the 50 questions, you need to get 25 correct. So you see, this is not really rocket science, right? Of course, you got to show the ability to strategize your time, right? And not get overwhelmed. And if you have a question that you stumble on and you really don't know that concept, you're probably better off moving on because you don't get penalized for an unanswered question and you don't get penalized for the wrong answer. So it means that even if you don't know and you're running out of time and you still have a couple of questions to do, you're better off guessing because it gives you statistical 25% chance rather than actually leaving them blank, which guarantees that you don't get the right answer. So the foundations is going to be that week, right? 2.5 days, which is over 5 half days, 5 mornings. And then the following week, you go to sit through the foundation exam. It's an online proctored exam, very straightforward. You bring a piece of ID as accredited training organization. Procept actually administers the exam, so it may even be me or somebody else from Procept. All you need is to show a piece of ID, formality, and then you start the exam, and you're all good for the 40 minutes. Once you pass it, a couple of weeks later, we're going to go through the practitioner course. For those of you who want to pursue that, the practitioner course is a different type of beast because this is about application, right? Application of your knowledge. So now they're not going to ask you straightforward questions about the material. They're going to ask you questions that imply that you want to show that you know the material in a case study situation. It means that you're going to have different types of questions, multiple choice and others. You're not going to have to, it's not an essay type exam. And you're going to have to, again, it's still, time is always of the essence, but it's less of a race. Here are some of the key concepts that we cover in the program. For example, force field analysis from Kurt Lewin. Uses to identify forces driving and resisting change in organization. It's essentially a visual, a diagram where you show the forces pushing for the change and forces pushing against the change. Remember, status quo, it means that there is some sort of an equilibrium, right? The equilibrium is that the forces for change and forces against change essentially just working against each other and keeping us where we are. The minute that you want the change to go ahead, go forward, you need to leverage the forces for the change and, of course, minimize those forces that physically actually block us. Stakeholder engagement strategy, right? Frameworks for mapping and communicating with stakeholders to ensure alignment, right, for the process. We're going to talk about various considerations around resistance. Remember that resistance comes from different places for different reasons and at different times, and it's not a program upon request. So we need to make sure that we know what is the source of resistance? Where is this person in their journey? Remember, when I come in and introduce an idea, a change that we are starting, I'm already convinced. I'm already ready to go with that. You just heard about it. And even if it's a brilliant idea, you're not just going to take my word for it, right? You're going to need some time. You need some time to process it, to digest, to sleep on it, right? To mourn the loss of the old and to get introduced to the new and then to buy into that. If I try to do it too fast or too slow, I will actually get even more resistance. When we look at resistance, there are also multiple reasons, right? Some people resist because they just don't want to change or they don't see a sense of urgency in living the comfort of the status quo. Other people will say, you know what? I'm not sure what's going on. I need more information. They may not tell me that. They may just think that. Other people will say, I know what's going on. I just am not sure that I can handle the new, whether it's AI or technology or new processes, or I'm going to lose some of the clout and stature that I have in the organization. And some people, fewer, will just say, I don't like it, or I don't like the way it's done. And the way we engage each group or all the members of each group is going to be very different because if you tell me I don't like it and I start repeating it and giving you training, you're going to say, well, what are you doing? You're not even tuned to my needs. I know exactly what's going on. I just don't like it. So here we have to think different, right? So resistance is really the main thing because if not for resistance, everything would be easy almost. Also, we're going to talk about how to plan for change because the whole idea is much more abstract, it's much more nebulous. It's about people's minds, and people's minds sometimes work without so much rhyme and reason. We're going to learn about people, about teams, about organizations, right, which are made out of people and teams. We're going to learn about learning, right? Listen, there's also a concept of learning, and when a change is being introduced, we learn. For example, right now, when you are introduced with a new change, there is a status quo, we said. And the status quo means that you now do things certain ways and you do them very well, probably. Actually, we're going to call from a learning and adaptation perspective, we're going to call this unconscious competence. You actually do most of your work almost on autopilot. You know exactly what to do, just like at your home you know exactly how far to reach in order to turn on the light switch and where it is and what height and everything, as opposed to when you move to a new place, it takes you some time. So unconscious competence. But when I introduce the new things and the new way of doing things, you shift into conscious incompetence. Sorry, to unconscious incompetence. The unconscious incompetence, essentially, you don't know what you don't know. As we are moving on, you move into conscious incompetence. At that point, you know that you don't know and to what extent. And the next step is going to be conscious competence. So you learn and you try, and it's almost like a new driver. It's not on autopilot, it's not in your DNA. You got to make sure you do things right, but you know what to do. And then with experience and with time, you're going to go back to that unconscious competence. So now you're going to know what you do, and it's going to be essentially in your DNA. So again, this is the type of considerations that we cover there, because we got to recognize that people need to learn. There's another discipline that the exam is actually digging much deeper into, and it's called neuroscience. Right? Neuroscience is really about how the brain is structured and trying to apply the things that happen in a change to which vortex and which part of the brain they engage. For example, if I change the team structure and I'm separating you from team members who you like and you have worked for a long time with, this actually engages the same part of the brain as physical pain. Right? And I cannot undermine it. I cannot say, oh, tomorrow it's going to be fine. You're going to have new team members. You're going to love them. Right? So we need to make sure that all these dynamics and interactions are actually addressed, whether it's with time, with hand-holding, with training, communications, or whatever else we have in our toolkit that we cover in this course in order to handle that. Notable thought leaders, we said John Carter, of course, known for his 8 steps. Now it's M steps because it used to be misinterpreted by people to be a linear process. And it is widely recognized in the field of change management. And this model helps organizations navigate and implement successful change. We have Kurt Lewin, who talked about said freeze change, unfreeze change, refreeze. So essentially, it's not the start of the change and the end of the change. When you introduce the change, you unfreeze. It's the end of the current way of doing things. And then you go through that change, that neutral zone, if you like, the transition, if you like, and then we refreeze into the new status quo. Right? And then we have Bridges, again, very similar to the Lewin. Bridges talked about the ending and the new beginnings. We have Sheen, Peter Senge, Daniel Pink, right? So many thought leaders, real thought leaders, who provide concepts. And those concepts are just complementing, sometimes slightly overlapping, but complementing other things. At the end of the day, of course, when we're engaging in change, the first time I was having a title that related to change. I was talking to some older colleague of mine, and I was very excited, and he was trying to cool off my excitement a little bit. And he said, managing change is like trying to poke a marshmallow. Um, what happens is that when you poke it gently, you see that actually there's motion. You poke it more and it moves, it comes back, but it moves. You poke it more and it moves more, and then you poke it harder in order to move forward. And then all of a sudden you are surrounded by marshmallow, right? And you can get out, right? And that's what happens in exchange. It looks easy, and all of a sudden we realize it's not as easy, and people are not buying in. So there are really probably 3 pieces of truth that we need to remember when it comes to change. It's hard, it's long, and it's expensive. And if somebody tells you it's going to be easy and or low cost and or easy, what am I going to tell you? Maybe you should run for cover, right? Because it's probably not going to be the case. Few change management models that we're going to cover, they're probably the best known model is going to be the ADKAR, actually from ProSci. So yes, you probably know about ProSci, and ProSci is a very common type of certificate too. ProSci is all based on the ADKAR framework, right? So here we are actually covering it. It's part of the exam, right? But it's one of multiple concepts and ideas and thoughts, right, that can help us. ADKAR takes us through the cycle of managing change, right? So talking about, first of all, having an awareness, right? So people are on the same page for why we need to change and why we can stay the way we are. The desire to support participation in change, the knowledge of how to change, and you see writes parallels to reasons for resistance that I mentioned before, the ability, implementing required skills and behaviors, the reinforcement of sustaining the change, and then, of course, there's going to be a use case, right? Often using global organizations to guide individuals and organizations through change. Of course, we have John Carter, that name that keeps coming up, right? Talking about having a sense of urgency, right? And he also mentioned building a guiding coalition. So that's the start of the critical mass of the influencers in the organization and the authority, or of course, talked about the strategy and the vision, right? So designing and communicating it, and then of course achieving the buy-in, spreading the vision, and actually one adjustment but evolution of his theory is that he wants a volunteer army. So it's not only the guiding coalition, we need to have build a critical mass through a volunteer army, right? Our change agents and our supporters along the way. And then, of course, covering change strategy, right? A plan outlining the approach, the goals, the phases of the change, and how it incorporates into a project plan, into a schedule, into a budget, because quite often we don't do those things very well. Key components, background, why the change is happening, the vision, like a North Star to guide us. High level timing, of course, and what needs to be done, and then engaging those stakeholders, right? Who and how needs to be involved. Foundation exam structure, we said 40 minutes, 50 questions, closed books, multiple choice, passing score is 25, which is 50%, no negative marking. The preparation, we have 2 sample exam papers that are provided by APMG. And then, of course, the foundation level focus with all the essentially 5 days of learning that we do. Knowledge of change management principles, stakeholders, engagement strategies, human aspects, neuroscience, and those thought leaders. To passing the foundation exam, you will have the option to opt into the practitioner level exam, which is, of course, built on the foundation. So only people who pass, which is never a problem. I mean, I never know of people who don't pass, but only people who pass the foundation will actually qualify for that. Tips for success: participate, pay attention, listen, study, and then, of course, practice the mock exams, and this should do. The practitioner, it will take 2.5 hours, and the format is open book and scenario based. Now, don't start celebrating. You know that open book exams are notoriously more difficult because the book is open. So, first of all, you can spend a lot of time navigating through the pages looking for stuff. So, you want to have stuff properly labeled and marked. Second, the book will not think for you. So many times, even when you go to the concept in the book, it's actually not going to give you the answer. It's just going to give you the concept over there. So you're going to have a few pieces of things to manage. You're going to have the open book, which would be either a virtual and a PDF or physical. You're going to have a scenario that is going to be provided to you on the screen, and the screen is essentially going to be split. And then you're going to have the questions and the answer sheet. Right? And the idea is that you want to spend a few minutes at the beginning of the exam reading the scenario and then answer the questions one by one. At some point, some questions will ask you to refer to the additional information that's provided in the case. So don't read the additional information before you're asked to, because it's just going to lack any context or purpose. Right? So the scenario is unique for the exam, and then it's open book. So when you need any concept or clarification, you will go to that area in the book. The number of questions, 4 complex questions that are based on case studies. These questions are actually split. Overall, you really have 80 marks. So it means 80 sub-questions. Passing mark, once again, is 50%, which is 40 marks. No negative marks, no penalty, right? Exam focus application of your change management knowledge principles into real world scenarios, demonstration of the ability that you acquire to manage change processes, stakeholder engagement, communications at a more advanced level. And then participants will be required to analyze that case study and apply the theoretical knowledge that you pick up in it. Right? So it's built in out of the 2.5 hours, you probably spend 8 to 10 minutes reading the case. And then sometimes you'll have to go back to it. Sometimes it will just provide you with some sort of a scenario or situation that extends, or was it the right thing, or what's the next thing to do. There are going to be also different types of questions in the practitioner exam. Of course, all scenario based, right? So the questions are based on the case study, right? And then it will show really understanding, analytical. The format, multiple choice. So many questions are going to be multiple choice, traditional, four options, you read everything, process of elimination, what have you. You will also have a few questions that are multiple options, multiple choice. So generally, you will have a multiple choice question with 5 or 6 options where 2 are correct, right? So essentially, the technique that you take is just like a regular multiple choice, but twice. So the first round, you'll find one answer that is correct, which is probably fairly easy usually. And then you're going to do a second round, and out of the remaining options, you will pick the next correct answer. Good news, no penalty for wrong answers. Bad news, no credits for partial answers. In other words, if you get one right, one wrong, as far as they're concerned, the question is wrong. You got to get the full 2. They're going to be also matching questions. So essentially, you're going to have a bunch of things on the left and a bunch of concepts associated with the one on the right, and then you will need to match the right thing to the right concept. You may actually have to match certain items twice or once or none, right? So you have 5 things there, 4 concepts there, and then you will match only 4. There's going to be also a little bit of a more tricky type of question, which is reason assertion. This is really requires more in-depth dive into what it means. But the main idea is that they give you a scenario, and then they give you a reason on one side and the assertion on the other side, and then you want to check the reason for the thing and the assertion, which is the underlying thinking behind it. So essentially, was it right or not? And then does it explain right or not? We will talk about it more there. Once you know the concept of this, wrapping your head around the concept of this question, you are going to be good. Types of questions, evaluate options, right? You have a scenario, evaluate different change management strategies, stakeholder engagement approaches, what best course of action, analyze the impact, implementation strategy, and then, of course, risk mitigation. Example question, given the scenario where the organization is implementing a new technology system, identify the key risks to the project success and propose strategies to manage these risks effectively. That's, of course, only the question. And then you're going to be presented with, depending on the type of question, most likely it's going to be, in this case, multiple choice. Always remember, in multiple choice, the good news is that the answer is there, right? The bad news is that there are also answers that are claiming to look good. So in every question, if you really are not confident about the answer, the first thing to do is probably process of elimination. That is, one question is fairly easy to rule out. One option is somewhat easy, and then you are in a toss-up of one of 2, which is much better than one of 4. Right? Just pay attention that the answer that you pick always answers the question that was asked. Practitioner tips and resources, open book, right? Familiarity with the case study and methodology and the course materials is the key to success. And then you want to quickly reference the models, right? Whatever they are. You will practice. So again, we are going to get 2 mock exams. Actually, it's the first one is a half exam, and then the second one is the full mock exam, right? With a case study that's provided to you. And of course, like everything else, time management is key. Develop a structured response, right? And review your answers and try not to be tempted late in the exam after almost 2.5 hours to try to change answer options that you selected hours earlier, right at the beginning, because most likely you're going to change it from right to wrong. You'll never know that. Resources, you're going to have the recommended text, you're going to have sample exams, and you're going to have the course materials. So as far as my part, it's that, right? I mean, we talked about the benefits, we talked about the value of the course, we talked about knowledge, recognition, right? So It's a very well recognized and valuable certificate that provides you not only with recognition, but also with practical knowledge that is very robust. And the course is also going to be interesting. I'm not going to say entertaining, but we try to keep it in a light way. And then, oh, looking at the formatting didn't work. I will stop the sharing on the screen now, and I will send it back to Maddie, and she will talk about some other things. Thank you, everyone. And of course, she will open the page for any questions.
Hello, yes, thank you so much, Ori. Great presentation. So the key dates for Change Management Fall are as follows. Foundations will run from November 4th to November 21st, and practitioners will run from November 25th to December 5th. There are some later sections that are also open for enrollment in, like January 2025 and the spring. So please check the full schedule on continue.uwindsor.ca. I apologize, the formatting was a little messed up at the bottom, so we will send out an email with our formal email if you have any questions, of course. And then change management, the fees for this course, it is $2,590 plus HST. Payment plans and discounts are available. So again, be sure to contact us at continue@uwindsor.ca for more information. And with that, thank you everyone for joining us today. And thank you again, Ori, for a very informative information session. Oh, do you have something to add?
Yes, just with the dates, you see
Oh,
November 4th to 21st, that includes the sessions and then the date of the foundation test, right? So it's not every day for half day for that period of time.
yeah.
Just
Absolutely. Thank you for the clarification. If everyone can go on the website, again, we will send out the link to our page after. That will give a more structured breakdown of the exact times in the day that the course will be running, as well as when the exam will actually take place. And again, if you have any questions about that timeline, the specific hours of the day when the course will be running, again, be sure to email us at continue@uwindsor.ca. And now we'd just like to open the floor for some questions for Ori. If you guys have anything that you're interested in, learning more about. I see our first one from Peter. Ori, would it be possible to, have maybe a PDF that we can send out of this presentation after? We also, just for everyone's recognition, this is recorded, so we will be sending everyone the recording of this information session. So everyone will have that, but can we also do a PDF? Is that possible, Ori?
yeah, I mean, I don't think there should be a problem with that.
Okay, wonderful. Sounds great. Any other questions while we have Ori on the line? Oh, I see one person typing. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Peter. We appreciate you. Okay, great. Well, so if there's no other questions at this time, I will stop sharing my screen and we can end the recording. Thank you all for joining us. And again, thank you, Ori, for your really informative presentation. We really appreciate it. And again, questions or concerns, definitely email us at continue@uwindsor. All of the information will be emailed to each participant, as well as the recording of the video will be emailed after we're done the session. So again, thanks for coming, and I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ivan.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.